Hello, good people and bad ones. Is there any such thing? I'm checking in, and it's been a little bit of a minute since I've done a video, so I want to share some experience. It's in direct relation to uh, nervous system regulation, and a little bit about retraining the fascia, and it's about attachment theory, in my case, which I've suffered a lot from in the past with the anxious preoccupied attachment style. And I'm going to upload this to my YouTube channel and to Facebook and into a nervous system regulation group that I'm a part of on Facebook. And so really, I really want to just give my experience and disclose a few things that have transpired for me over the last 12 or so months. Yeah, so yeah, I had this difficulty with this nervous system stuff. I've been an addict for a long time, so I did a lot of emotional, mental repressing occurred, and my nervous system was all shot to hell, and CPTSD type scenario, both big T and little T trauma, yeah, religious, cultish type trauma. Yeah, but mainly in the anxious preoccupied is really where it showed up, it played out in me, and it was always very difficult. It was always really horrible feeling that way, and when I say that way is in intimate relationships. It was very often when I was just felt like so contracted, so tense, so hyper vigilant in my nervous system. I was always looking to, have solutions for problems that hadn't even occurred yet. I was always on the lookout for, in my attempt to feel safe within. So I want to share that the big movements that have happened in the last 12 months started when I went to the Vipassana 10-day silent retreat, meditation retreat, and I did that in New Zealand, and I'm leaving the country soon, going to Thailand, Vietnam. Yeah, so I spent 10 days at Vipassana, and there was something that happened in Vipassana that I perceived as such a way, and I perceived it that way, and I gave it meaning, and the meaning made me feel uncomfortable, and in a short period of time, say 24 to 48 hours, confirmation bias evidence came in, and I became absolutely convinced that I was right about the circumstance or the situation that I had perceived. And so much so that over a period of 4 or 5 days, I was going to take it to the management of the centre to let them know. And then around about, so I was absolutely convinced that I was right about a situation. And the reason why I want to say this is because, or share this, is because This has happened so many times in my relationships and has caused me and other people so much discomfort and separation and distance, created a big chasm between me and my girlfriends, and I never had the emotional capacity to be able to sit with it. I didn't really know how to. Over the last 12 months, I've been learning how to, and I'm really, really grateful to say that I've made mammoth, giant steps forward in this. And the proof is always in the pudding. So I've been in situations where I can tell that the effectiveness and the the importance of the work that I've been doing, which is not mind work. And see, so one of my difficulties was that I always went for the heavy mind work, going down the rabbit holes of the shadow work and the inner child work and the psychosomatic work, which all has its place. I'm not going to, for 1 second, try and deny the importance of the mind in our healing modalities and therapies, including even placebo stuff. And there's an element of that is required. What I'm saying is that I was really top heavy. I was neck up, trying to analyze. If you've ever heard the term paralysis of analysis, it was always top heavy work. It was always mind work, and I've in the last 12 months I've come to just find for myself and experience that my mind is forever trying to trip me up and perceive things that are just not real. And as I said, in Vipassana there was something that happened, and I was absolutely convinced that my perception was 100% accurate, and it caused, and I attached a meaning, and I started to have feelings about it and strong emotions about it, and then around about the 7-day mark of being in Vipassana, something else happened which completely blew my story out of the water. And I realized that I could not be any further from the truth. There was absolutely no substance, no grounding, no fact in what I absolutely believed to be true in the 6 or 7 days leading up to that. And it was such a potent insight for me, because I realized how much I had done that in my intimate relationships with women. And I became very aware of it. And this is not to say that, I don't want to say that I've completely managed to cure myself of that in the last 12 months, because I haven't. It's a work. It definitely is a work in progress, and I will always be working to regulate my nervous system now for the rest of my life, which is definitely my new jam. And so I'm very much into the somatic practices and, somatic dance, somatic yoga, somatic therapy in general, fascia, reprogramming. But the emphasis now is on the body. There's a lot of body work, because trauma is held in the body, and the body has a mind of its own, so to speak. I don't think that that's factual, but I think you know what I mean when I say that. The body has its own intrinsic mind. So that was my Vipassana experience. And when I realized how much I do that in intimate relationships and why I'd had so much trouble that I have, and then I learned a few things extra over the last 12 months, and I learned about this thing called neuroception, and I always knew that this was right. I just didn't know these words. So neuroception is a form of perception where I can perceive something that happens that reminds me of something that happened many years ago on an almost an unconscious level, and I will react to that threat as if it is actually real, when in truth it's not real. It's not even real. So I can testify to this when I've said in the past that in relationships, if I even sensed anything that even felt or smelt like abandonment or rejection or distancing, my body would brace, and I would go into all the unconscious coping mechanisms. And for me, that I used to rely heavily on smoking, and I've relied heavily on alcohol, drugs, and pornography in the past as well, and sex as well. And it was very, very uncomfortable. And I mean, who of us wants to live that way? We don't want to. It's very uncomfortable to live that way when we constantly in fight, flight, fawn, or freeze, and you've got all that cortisol and that adrenaline just pumping through your body, and you're just feeling that angst and that wired, truly wired feeling, and like there's no escape from it, and you just want. I just want relief. I want it now. I don't have. I never had the bandwidth to, or the emotional capacity to sit with the discomfort. And the other thing that made it worse was I was always identified with it. I identified it with it as it being me. And so I've, incorporated a few spiritual practices as well. And I learned something last week. I was on a webinar, so I'm learning more and more to alchemize and sit in the uncomfortableness. And there's a few exercises that I do with that to expand that capacity to hold tension and hold discomfort. I'll just give a quick note to semen retention is one of those things. Semen retention. That's probably a little bit more difficult one. It depends on where you're at, where we're at on our journey. But there's other things, like for example, what I do nowadays is I'll just, every single shower I have, I finish washing myself, and then the tap goes straight to cold. And I stay in there for an absolute minimum of 30 seconds, an absolute minimum. And it resets my vagus nerve, and it strengthens me, and it strengthens my confidence, and it, and my body has the capacity to hold the discomfort. So that's just one little thing. And I've noticed in the cooler months in New Zealand, I've been able to go to the beach and go into the water. And when you go into the water and you go into the waves and you get just below your waist and you're starting to brace and that sort of thing. And I've noticed I'm just able to walk straight in. That there's a lot more what's the word? A confidence, I guess. There's confidence. It's like I've got this. I've got my own back. I've got me. So I'm wanting to share these things with you, and yeah, as I've said, I'm doing somatic therapy certification, and I want to be able to, mainly for myself, but I want to be able to offer it as well in online education, etc., etc. But nothing speaks louder than personal first-hand experience. So yeah, the Vipassana thing happened, and then I started learning some other stuff, and I started doing some somatic practices, including yoga. I started going to a local yoga studio class, and I've always loved dancing. I've always loved dancing, but I had certain injuries, that make it difficult for me to dance the way that I love to dance. I do a thing called ecstatic dancing or somatic dancing, where you just cut loose, you just go wild, and and there's parts of me in my spine that don't always allow that to happen. So I can do a lot more gentler practices like Pilates, like yoga, and I still have to listen to my body. I still have to listen very much to what my body is saying, and don't overdo it as well. But there's these daily practices that I do, and what I really want to get towards now is the payoff of it, though, the consequence, the effect of it, and how potent this work is. And I've started doing something that I've called neurogenic tremoring, which is it's quite similar to TRE. And the truth of the matter is, I just didn't really want to pay for the qualification. So and I've used a bit of AI, and I am trauma informed, and so yeah, I've had a few paying clients already, and really the payment that or the donation that I want really is to give me a bit of a recommendation on my Facebook business page, because that all helps. And it's not only that, it's the old adage of the more you give, the more you receive. I'm walking into a position by moving overseas that puts me in an economic position where I don't need to go and work and get into that whole westernized conditioning stuff, which but of course I do want to be helpful, and I do want to earn a little bit of money as well. I don't even know why I'm putting in this video, but I'm not going to edit it out, because I'm all about being real and being authentic as much as I can, as much as is possible. So yeah, the practices that I do have enabled me to show up far differently than I would ever have in the past. And I've noticed it, and I first noticed it when I went to a local supermarket. I was walking in to the supermarket, and I was just able to feel the lack of tension in my shoulders. Yeah, or the absence, that's the word I'm looking for, the absence of tension in my shoulders. And I felt embodied, So I've become more and more passionate about these embodiment somatic practices, and to really feel safe within my own body, which is not something that I'm familiar with, I had a worldview that the world was a very dark and dangerous, unsafe place to be. And so I'm really beginning to change that now, and my energy is not leaking out all over the place with all sorts of things, actually. But yeah, so So that was the first real acid test. Was I was walking into this grocery store, and I just noticed the absence of tension in me, and it was like I actually stopped in my tracks for a couple of seconds, and I went, wow, this is pretty cool. I haven't felt like this very often in the past. And yeah, I just soaked it up, actually, soaked up the experience. Anyway, I continued on, and sometime down the track, and then I went to a retreat, a relational rights retreat, and that was really good. And I learned a little bit more about resourcing and etc., and yeah, just about vulnerability and yeah, things like that. It was really good. And so I ended up, after that, sometime later, going to a festival. And I'm not that familiar with festivals at all. And there was a bit about them that scared me. And there was always this, for me, there was always this, I need to be able to retreat to my own safe space and be by myself. I need my own space. And that was about safety and about anxiety and about not, feeling very uncomfortable around other human beings and not feeling embodied within and not having that capacity to hold tension or to have the capacity to be just stay in the silence, you know. Those awkward pauses that we talk about in conversation sometimes, where that part of wants to jump in and fill the gap with words. And I've found in my experience, and I've done that plenty of times, I can often trip myself up in those moments, and I can make myself look a little bit foolish, really, and look a little bit ridiculous. So it's about now becoming comfortable with those uncomfortable silences and those gaps where I don't have to fill the gap, you know. So it's been a really great journey, and so I noticed at this festival that I was felt really embodied, and I was just able to be myself and totally not have to retreat to my tent every hour or every 3 hours or whatever. I was able to be out there with people live and in person, and talk and hold the silence and hold the discomfort and just be out with all these people that I didn't know and actually build connection with them, actually build genuine connection with them, on an honest, authentic level without having to position myself or market myself as someone who knew a lot about a lot. It was okay. It's okay to not know. It was a beautiful experience. I felt really embodied. I felt really safe. I was able to have uncomfortable conversations and not have to retreat. I didn't have to go to my tent for a joint or not that I don't use marijuana or psychedelics that much anymore. I do use them now and again. They have their place, and I do enjoy them when I do. I just don't play with, I don't play with those things. They, for me, they're medicine, not to be taken lightly. And I can have, really, really great insights with those tools. Anyway, yeah, so I've just, there was that, and then I went to another festival a few weeks after that, and I went to a men's retreat in between those times. So, and then I moved house, and then I've, started, it's been interesting. I've been able to talk to women more comfortably and more confidently in my work, which is a retail position. So it's customer facing, and just men too. Is like I've been able to. That's been a really great asset. Is I've been able to stand face to face with men and look them in the eye, and just hold my own frame, just really be in my own frame, and I don't have to impress. I don't have to outperform. I don't have to feel inadequate. Just be present. Just be present and be right here, right now, and not let the mind wander off and perceive all these things wrongly. But as I say, it's a practice, and it's an ongoing practice, and I still do fall into those traps. But I have the joy of awareness now, and I've been able to be in the observer position more often now. And so I learned this little thing the other day called the current drop, and it's about being aware. It's about awareness, whatever's going on inside, awareness, and then to acknowledge that, whatever it is that's going on, and then to just allow it to be there. I'll own it. I have been I've trained myself to immediately run away from any kind of discomfort like I treated discomfort like the plague. Just get the hell away from it as quickly as possible. And I did that through, lots and lots of drinking and lots of drugs and lots of pornography and lots of gambling and, well, not so much gambling, but, just projection as well. Projection, blaming other people, not taking responsibility. And a lot of it manifested in depression and being really afraid and stuck and really not knowing how to pass through these uncomfortable situations. So it's a very secluded, very isolated, very caged, imprisoned, enslaved life to live that way. And feel so blessed and so grateful to have come across a way that I don't have to live that way anymore. I just don't have to live that way anymore. And I love to be able to embody, become more and more embodied and to share that stuff. And I have been able to share that stuff with some other people, at least half a dozen other people that have really benefited from it. So I'm grateful to be able to pass it on as well. So yeah, co-regulation, all that sort of stuff. So yeah, just to be able to front up in life differently than we ever have, and really strip out and outgrow those old conditionings and old programmings and old traumas, and the real beauty of the body work is that we don't have to keep rehashing the trauma. We don't have to keep rehashing it in our mind and going over and over it and speaking about it, the talk therapy, and which, creates its own energy, which just expands, and, we get more of the same. So for me now, it's very much about body work, just dropping into the body more and more and more, dropping into the body, and not excluding the mind, because the mind is necessary. I mean, in embodiment practices and somatic practices, you have to be aware, and you have to, I have to be aware, and I have to use my mind to be aware of my breath, to be aware of my sensations in my body, to be aware of the energy, to, oh, what does that energy look like? What does it feel like? Has it got a shape? Has it got edges? How big is it? Where is it? That's all awareness stuff, and that all requires mind. So I'm just wanting to really emphasize, though, that I have progressed so much more in the last 6 to 12 months as I've dropped into body work than I ever had with the CBT and the DBT and the psychotherapy and the mind work and the shadow work and all that stuff. And it definitely has its place. I will not minimize it. It definitely has its place. But the real profound progress that I've made has been from the neck down, doing the exercises that I need to do to bring these changes about. And I've got quite a few up my sleeve now, so if you ever want to have a chat about it, please just reach out. And I mean, I still, on an unconscious level, there are still actions that I do that are trauma responses, basically, they're trauma responses. But I'm evolving, and I'm really, really, really happy and contented with my progress. And I'm not out to prove, I don't have to prove myself to anybody else. I just need to prove myself to me and have my own back. But I think I want to acknowledge something too that a friend of mine, a very close friend of mine, said was about a lot of these practices too also assume that you have a baseline of emotional and nervous system safety. And that is not true for everybody. A close friend of mine, was brought up with narcissistic abuse and does not have that baseline, or has not had that baseline of safety. So it becomes a different process for people that have that experience. Anyway, it's been a little while since I did a video, and I just really wanted to share my experience and send out the love and the gratitude, and peace out, rock on, as always. Later.